So this is just a review of some of the things that we talked about last class. That basically, slope is the measure of how steep a line is. And slope can either be negative or it can be positive. So for example, if you look at these ones on the left, if you read the graph from left to right, these lines are both rising, and so they're called positive slopes. And if you look at the picture on the right-hand side, when you read from left to right, these lines are dropping, and so they're called negative slopes. In addition, last class we talked about the fact that a slope was simply just the ratio of the rise to the run. And so what we did last class was we had a picture and we found 2 points and we just counted what the rise was and we counted what the run was. And then we just simply wrote it in a fraction form. And so this is just, again, a review of what we talked about last class. Today what we're going to be talking about is how we can calculate slope if you're not necessarily given a picture. So for example, you're given 2 points, for example in this case point 1, which we call x1 and y1, and point Q, which we can call x2 and y2. And so you have these points and you have to figure out what the slope between them is. So again, remember that slope is simply just the rise over the run. Another way of saying that is the change in your y-coordinates. So if you look at this line here, how much have your y-coordinates changed from one point to the other? And then you can divide that by the change in the x-coordinate. So again, if you look at the horizontal, you can sort of think how much has it changed from one point to the other horizontally. This triangle is just a symbol in math that we call delta. So this, I would read this as delta y, which means the change in y, and delta x, which means the change in x. And to find the change in y, all you actually have to do is subtract the y values from one another. So you take the y2 and you subtract the y1 from it. Likewise, to get the change in x, you take the x2 and you subtract the x1 from it. And so this is now a new formula that we can use to calculate slope. So an example of that is here. So here are 2 points, and you're asked to find the slope that passes through those points. So your first step is to write down the formula. So m, or slope, is equal to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. Now sometimes what I do, especially as you're first learning it, is I will identify which point is x1, which point is x2, and so on. And so I will say that this one is x1, that this one is y1, that this one is x2, and that this one is y2. And then what I'm going to do is just substitute the values into my formula. So y2 was 8, y1 was 1, x2 was 6, and x1 was 2. And then my last step is to just simplify and put it in lowest terms if it is not already. And that is my final answer for the slope. Now, a couple things that sometimes get confusing. When we plot points, we always plot the x first and the y second. But if you look at the formula for slope, we're actually doing the y part first and the x part second. And so sometimes that can be confusing. So just make sure you're aware of that slope is the rise over the run. So let's look at another example. So again, you've got 2 points. The first thing that I might do is identify which one's x1, which one's y1, which one's x2, and which one's y2. By the way, it actually doesn't matter. I could have called this one x2 and y2, and this one x1 and y1. All that matters is that I'm consistent. What I cannot do, I can't call this x1 and y2. So I cannot do that, but otherwise it doesn't matter which one I call point 1 and which one I call point 2. So now, again, all I'm going to do is write the formula. Oops, I'm not sure what happened there. So I'm going to write the formula that m is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and I'm going to substitute in my values. So negative 1 minus 1 over 3 minus negative 5. Now be careful with this one because you've got integers. So remember that -1 minus 1 is -2, and that 3 minus -5 is actually 8. And then you're going to simplify that to -1/4. And again, that would be the slope of the line that passes through those 2 points. Now this slide is just basically a review of something that we talked about last class. If you look at the 2 points that you're given, they actually form a horizontal line. And one trick that you have for knowing that is look at the y-coordinates. The y-coordinates of both of these are the same. And as soon as you know that the y-coordinates are the same, you know that it's going to be a horizontal line. And as we reviewed last class, all horizontal lines have a slope of 0. And the reason for that is they have no rise. And if the formula is rise over run, then it's always going to be 0 divided by some number, which will equal 0. Now, vertical lines, if you recall, and again, we know that these are vertical because the x-coordinates are the same. So that's kind of a little trick to know whether you're dealing with a vertical line or not. So again, this one was a little different. These ones have a slope that we call undefined. And that did not write very well, so I'll write that again in another spot. And the reason for that is that there's no run. So when we do rise over run, we get some number divided by 0. And you can't have that, and so we call that undefined. So just keep that in mind with horizontal and vertical lines. Now, this next slide is just something that we can do for graphing. So if you had to graph a slope, what you could do is start with a point. So in this case, it's asking you to start with the point 3, 4. So that means from the origin, I'm going to go over 3, and I'm going to go up 4, and I'm going to put a point at the point 3, 4. Then from that, I know that my slope is 3 over 4. So all I have to do from that point is go up 3 and over 4. I can actually keep doing that if I want. Up 3 and over 4. And then all I need to do is get a ruler and draw a line that goes through those points. Don't forget to put arrows on the ends of your line. So let's try that with the next one. So this one, we have the point -1, 3. So I'm going to go over 1 and down 3. And there's my point. And then from that point, I'm going to do my slope of -2/3. Now be careful with this one because it's negative. So instead of going up 2, like I did in the top one, I'm actually going to go down 2 and then over 3. And again, I can keep doing that. And I'm going to get my ruler and I'm going to draw my line. And again, don't forget to put arrows on the ends of your line. And that is how you can draw lines when you're given a point and a slope.